Retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, Amazon to Amazon, wholesale and private label. These are your main 5 ways to sell profitable products on Amazon. But what nobody tells you on YouTube is they're not suited for everyone. So you need to work out which one is suited for yourself, and that is exactly what we're going to walk through in today's video. I'll be going through what each one involves, the capital needed and the time also needed. So by the end of the video, you'll know exactly the one that you should be doing. So let's get into the video. So we're going to be starting off with retail arbitrage. Retail arbitrage is where a lot of Amazon sellers start. This basically involves in going into shops like Boots, for example, going to the clearance and then using an app called SellerToolKit. What you can do is you're then going to go and scan the products and compare them to what they sell on Amazon. And the idea is when there is a big enough price difference between what you can buy it for right there and what it's selling on Amazon, what you can do is you're going to buy the product and then go and ship it into Amazon to go and sell it. So for example, you might go and pick up a product for about £4 in B&M, but maybe because there's a lack of people selling on Amazon, it's actually selling for £14. Well, what you can then do is make yourself £4 per product after fees. And obviously picking up only one of these products probably wouldn't be worth it, so maybe you're going to go and buy 20 units and 30 units, and if you actually went and bought 30 units, you'd then be making £120. So why is this a great method? Well, this is a great method because absolutely anyone can do it. You can just pop to your local shops, go into the clearance section, and happy days. All you need is your phone and SellerToolKit. And this is also a really nice introduction into seller fees, because when I often tell people that I sell stuff on Amazon, and you can tell them, you know, you might buy some for a tenner, sell it for 20 quid, they're normally very surprised that you're only going to make about £2 to £3 after all those Amazon fees. So it's a really nice introduction because it can definitely be really overwhelming for new sellers and really surprising how high those fees can get. So the negatives are, even though it's positive because there's low risk, it kind of comes with low risk, low reward. You know, you're not going to be able to normally find 20, 30 products if there is a good deal. And it can also take time to go and find the deals, and then can take time to queue and actually drive there, which is why the next method that we're going to move on to works quite nicely. So the next method we're going to move on to is online arbitrage. Now this is where the vast majority of Amazon FBA sellers go and source their products. So what is online arbitrage? It is basically the online version of what we've just talked about. So rather than going into a shop and looking at the clearance, we're just going to go on a website and look at a clearance. And the exact same shops that you can retail arbitrage, you can online arbitrage as well. Boots, like I said, you can go and get yourself great deals in person, but there's great deals at least every week on Boots to also go and pick up online. And there's 2 really good bits of software to go and use with this. We've got SellerToolKit. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to go and show us what we can go and buy it for. And then if we look at what the projected price would be, it will show us all the fees in between. It can also go and sell us the quantity sold. And then the second bit of software we're going to use is something called Keeper. Now, Keeper is basically the history of a product. So SellerToolKit might say, okay, well, 100 have gone and sold in the last month. Keeper, you can look how much we're selling, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Personally, I even like looking at how much it's sold in the last year, because then what I do is I'll work out, okay, well, they've been this price for 50% of the year, so maybe I want to be a little bit more cautious rather than if they've maybe been a nice high price for the whole year. And kind of the back end of online arbitrage, the nice thing about this is if you do go and buy products, you can actually just ship them straight to your prep centers. Now, prep centers is kind of a slightly further down the line sort of thing that Amazon sellers do. Basically what they are is they're centers that you'll send the products to, they'll ship them up and send them to Amazon. But again, a lot of introductory sellers will normally just buy the items, get them sent to their house, and then label them up themselves to lower the costs and fees. So what are the benefits with online arbitrage in comparison to retail arbitrage? Well, the nice thing is the hours are really set around you. You can go and buy stuff at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, whereas obviously, if you're waiting for retail, you've got to wait for those shops to go and open up. And also you can just throw 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, rather than if you're doing retail, well, you're probably going to be in a shopping centre and you're going to go around shops one by one, which might end up taking multiple hours. And another benefit that you get with online arbitrage over retail arbitrage, and again, a lot more new sellers aren't aware of this, is cashback. You can get cashbacks on sites such as Cooper, Top Cashback, and Honey. And again, you can end up getting about 3%, and I've had cashback as high as 10-15. So this can really help bring the price of those products down because, you're getting cashback where you wouldn't normally get it with retail. And going back to the example we used where we said, okay, well, if you are doing retail arbitrage and you find something that's only 4 quid, go and buy 30 units, 120 quid. The reality is, there's not going to be 30 units probably on a shelf. Now, you can always go and ask some staff member and they might have more around the back. But with online arbitrage, you can normally end up buying tens. I've personally even bought hundreds of a certain unit just on a run-of-the-mill sort of site. So it's really good for scaling because if you're really confident on a deal, or maybe you want to buy multiple months worth, it's a lot easier to go and buy that quantity rather than in real life. especially if you're buying big products. If you're buying big products, you know, having to load around 30, 40 of them is a lot harder than if you just get 30, 40 shipped to your house. So it really looks like I've gone on hard sold you online arbitrage, but there actually are a few benefits of retail arbitrage instead. The first one is competition. Now, obviously, when you're buying stuff online in the UK, you could go and buy the same stuff if you're in Manchester than if you're in Brighton. It doesn't matter where you're in the UK. In fact, there might even be people not in the UK buying that stock to send to prep centres. But if you're doing retail arbitrage, it's a little bit different because there might be certain shops with certain clearances and you're not going to get them up, I don't know, up north. Or there also might be that they're completely cleared out in Manchester. So the only place you can get them is down south. So it's geographically a bit harder to go and source as many, which as a result means you can have less competition. And talking from experience from even just this year, there is nothing worse than when you're doing online arbitrage and you get a great deal. And normally it'll sell out. It'll sell out maybe within a few hours, at worst 24 hours. But I've also had it where I got a great deal and that deal was there for days. I think it was even there for like 2 weeks and it ended up being, again, there might have been like 5, 6 sellers. There was about 50 sellers by the end of it. And it was taking about 4 months for the product to actually recoup. So with online arbitrage, because there can be so many people buying the exact same stuff, you can end up having listings getting really saturated, which can really make it hard to either 1, get a high profit margin, or 2, ship a high amount of units. So a quick one before we do carry on. We've referred to a few times in this video already about the Amazon fees, and we talked earlier about how you could buy something for 10 quid, sell it for 20 quid, and actually the amount of profit you make after fees isn't that high. Well, thanks to SellerToolKit, you can actually see all the fees in one place. And what this allows you to do is actually to see if your business is profitable or not. But on top of there being fees, there's loads of other expenses that people aren't aware of. For example, we've got reimbursements, we've got returns, we've got when Amazon damages goods, and luckily SellerToolKit keeps this all in one place, and you guys can get yourself a free trial by checking out the link in the description. So the third method is a bit like online arbitrage, or it is online arbitrage, but with ye old faithful Amazon. This basically means that we are buying stuff from Amazon, we're getting it sent to our house, and then we're sending it back out to Amazon with our barcode on. Now, how does this work? Because if we're buying from the same place, well, Amazon, as you guys may know, has some really good deals. You know, they can just slash prices by 40%, 50%, 60%. When there's promos, even when there's no promos. Sometimes you get a brand that is just doing buy 2 items, get 30% off, and they also might have discounts on the items. So there's loads of deals to be able to get on Amazon, and again, after about 24 hours or 48 hours, those prices can flip back up to that maximum price they were selling for previously. So this method is all about using Keeper, and basically what it do is Keeper is going to highlight these massive price drops. You can then have a little analyzer of the graph, and if you're confident that it's going to go back up again, you can go and buy the product, receive it, and then send it back out to Amazon. So what are the benefits with this method? Well, if you're already doing online arbitrage and retail arbitrage, it is the exact same thing, but just by using Amazon as one of those online arbitrage websites. But the benefit of using Amazon to Amazon over online arbitrage is everything is in one place. You might have a site, maybe let's say Boots. They're vastly selling cosmetics. Amazon is selling absolutely anything and everything. So as a result, you have all the products in one place. Whereas the negatives of doing Amazon to Amazon are the exact same as online arbitrage, but I'd say they're heightened even more. So I was using the example how I bought an item and I thought it'd sell out within a day and it was there for 2 weeks. And what happened is we had loads of sellers. You will see the exact same thing happen with Amazon, but it will just be even worse because it's basically online arbitrage, but there's a lot more people looking at them. It's basically high risk, high reward of online arbitrage. So what this means is you probably want to have a bit more diversification regarding what you're buying and probably not go too deep. So that moves us on to method 4, and method 4 is definitely about going very deep, and that is wholesale. Wholesale is basically when you go directly to the distributor and you're going to go and buy, 500 units, 1,000 units, and you're probably going to get about a 40 to 60% discount. And this sounds great. If you could go and buy 500 units at a 60% discount, you're going to get yourself a really nice profit. But there are a fair few complications that come with this. One of this being brand relations. For a big brand to want to go and give 500 units to a completely unknown seller, it's not a brick and mortar store, it's not like a corner shop, you're a relatively new e-commerce website, it's going to be quite hard for them to actually trust you to be able to sell their product. And another thing that also people aren't the biggest fan of, but you got to look at the flip side of it, is the profit per unit can normally be quite low. Now, when people are doing wholesale, what they'll end up doing is normally buying products that are selling at least 100 per month. So the profit per product will normally be quite low, but the idea is you can sell a high quantity, and that high quantity will make up for the low profit per product. So we'll use the example that maybe you're only making £3 profit per product, but maybe you can go and sell 500 of them every month. So individually, looks small, but that 1.5 thousand is going to be great at the end of the month. On top of this, if you've got this with multiple products, then it can stack up whilst not having to worry about selling too many products. The nice thing about this is it's really predictable. With online arbitrage, you don't know what sale from what site with what products. Whereas with wholesale, you know exactly what you're getting, and your kind of business relationship is only going to compound with them. So we talked a little bit about how wholesale you're going to be buying hundreds of units. Well, this basically creates a really high barrier to entry. A lot of newer sellers aren't going to be able to afford to buy hundreds and hundreds of one unit, or they're not going to have the confidence to go and buy hundreds of a unit. This means that you're going to have a much lower chance of having lots of people competing with the buy box. And finally, replenishability. There is nothing better as a seller than when you've kind of sold out a lot of your stock and you can just go and buy the exact same product for the exact same price. And that is what you'll be able to get yourself with wholesale. So what are the negatives with wholesale? Well, the first one is it's not very beginner friendly. Again, you're going to be spending a lot of capital on a small amount of products. This is unlike maybe if you're doing online arbitrage or retail arbitrage, where maybe you're going to go and buy 3 or go and buy 10 of a product to be able to ungate it. And then maybe, let's say, there's a problem with it. Maybe it's needs a safety data sheet, or there's other complications. Then now you're going to be stuck with hundreds of a unit rather than 3 units to 10 units. So again, it's a much higher sort of high risk, high reward. The one thing I will say with this is it's not necessarily you have to do one and then the next and then the next. So for example, you don't have to go online arbitrage and then when you're making X amount of money, then move to Amazon, then when you're making X amount of money, move on to wholesale. Because there are people who are generally doing over £20,000 profit per month just on online arbitrage and Amazon to Amazon. So the last method we are going to be talking about is private label. So when you go and get yourself an ad on Amazon about a product, more likely than not, that's going to be a private label product. So what is a private label product? A private label product is when someone has basically identified a gap in the market or a nice high demand product. Then what they'll do is they'll then go and normally have it produced in China on a high scale, 500 units to 1,000 units. They'll then go and put their own branding on it, or they'll go and get a patent for it. And then what they'll do is they'll ship it to themselves over in the UK. Now this can normally take months, but as I say, there can be some very high profits because you're getting stuff mass made in China, and then you're basically building a brand. They'll then go and potentially spend a few months on branding, and the idea is by now they've got a product that's been nice and cheap for them to buy. They've kind of increased the value because they've created demand with the branding, and now they're going to sell it for a really high profit margin. Now the nice thing with this is because it's a private label, you have no competition. You created the product, which means you are going to be the only one who sells the product. So this sounds really good, but again, it is a very, very expensive sourcing method. We're talking about 5k to 20k before you've even gone and sold a product. So very capital intensive. And just how I said it costs 5k to 20k before you've even sold a product, you potentially just won't sell a product. You potentially could have really missed the mark with the demand. And as a result, you're now stuck with 1,000 items that potentially don't have much of a demand or much of a brand, and you just can't sell them, wasting a lot of time because again, the sort of whole process can end up taking about 5 to 6 months. And also a lot of money. So the positive of this is we're talking high margins, we're saying there's no competition whatsoever, and you're actually building an asset slash a business that maybe you're going to go and sell down the line, rather than the sort of business model with OA and Amazon to Amazon, where actually you're just buying and selling other people's goods. So let's go and give you a little recap on all the methods. We'll start with retail arbitrage. This method is great when you're learning, when you want to have a very low risk, but kind of understand the business model. So once you've done a bit of retail arbitrage, that's when you can move on to online arbitrage, or you could just start a very low scale online arbitrage. This is really going to help you scale and be able to invest more money into the business to hopefully be able to get more money out. And once your online arbitrage is going well, then you can add Amazon to Amazon as one of your sourcing methods, because again is another really easy way to scale up the amount of capital that you're putting into your business. Then if you've now scaled your business over 5,000, what you then can look into is wholesale. Again, you don't want to be touching this if you're too low on capital, because you're just not going to be able to get the volume of products or get them discounted enough. But again, if you want to try something new from your online arbitrage and your A2A, well, that's when you can start looking onto wholesale. And if you want a completely different sort of venture, well, then you can move on to private label. But again, unless you've got maybe 10,000 that you can just burn away because, you know, nothing's ever guaranteed with it, well, then you can move on to private label. So the motto with this is pick one, master it, and then advanced. But the reality is whatever method you're doing, you should be knowing how much profit you're actually making. Because it's all good and well having a really high revenue, but if you're not having a high profit, well then you don't really want to be scaling that method. And that's where SellerToolKit comes in. It tracks your profit, it tracks your expenses, and it tracks your revenue, and everything in between. A link to a free trial of SellerToolKit is in the description. And if you're interested in checking out another video on how to grow your Amazon business, make sure to check out this video right here.